You don't have to worry about the next people who go through. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Hinduism. Sean, is it capturing me? Can you sort of see me in there?
I can see you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah, because I'm over here.
So start with an attention getter. And you will have maybe a minute or so to collect your thoughts. Once you know which religion you're going to talk about, you can sit and kind of just meditate for a moment and think about what you want to say. But an attention getter should capture what stands out most to you about the religion. So for Hinduism, I might say, Hinduism is incredibly diverse. In fact, in a way, it's like the ultimate religion because it combines ancient myths and oral traditions with writings and sophisticated philosophy. It combines dramatic polytheism with a kind of monotheism. It combines these rigid social structures with a sort of emphasis on the freedom of the individual. So diversity would be kind of like my attention getter for Hinduism. The history of Hinduism, historians trace it back to the Indus Valley culture, which existed probably around 2300 BC in northwestern India in the Indus Valley. Some scholars call these people the Dravidians. And the theory is that at some point, after a couple centuries or a century or so of their history, they were invaded by a group of people from Asia called the Aryans. The Aryans brought with them their own set of deities, like Indra, and the theory is that the Aryans set up the caste system to keep the local indigenous people kind of separate from themselves, and that's why there's a caste system today. That's what historians think. For Hindus themselves, they call their religion Sanatana Dharma, which means eternal teaching, and they think it's eternal. In fact, they think the universe is eternal. It has no beginning, and it has no end. They believe that the universe goes through these cycles of death and rebirth. So they think of their religion as being eternal. In their modern history, it might be fair to say that Hinduism kind of helped India achieve independence, because the main leader of independence in the wake of the Second World War was Mahatma Gandhi, who was a devout Hindu. And in fact, he loved the text, the Bhagavad Gita, and for him that text teaches nonviolence. So he led India to independence through nonviolence. And shortly after India achieved independence, it split from Pakistan. Pakistan is now a majority Muslim country. India is majority Hindu, although there are other religions there. India and Pakistan are both armed with nuclear weapons, and they don't like each other. So every so often there's a little crisis, and there's this region between the two of them. I think it's called Kashmir, which is kind of like disputed territory. So that's India today. India today economically is on the rise. The caste system is still in place, but a lot of people want to kind of modernize that and get rid of it because it seems to infringe on human rights. So that's kind of what I'd say about the history of Hinduism. So Hindu beliefs. Hindus will tell you that there are 30 million gods. But usually, each Hindu or each Hindu family would be devoted to just one. So for example, one of the main gods is Shiva. Shiva is thought of as the god of the destruction of the universe. He's responsible for that circle of death and rebirth. And that's why he's portrayed as dancing within a ring of flames. The flames symbolize the death of the universe and the eternity of that cycle. Shiva is often, one of the stories that's told about Shiva is a story about him and his consort. I think her name was Parvati, if I'm not mistaken. He went home to his consort horny, wanting to have sex with her. And their son Ganesha was standing in the doorway, preventing him from getting into the house. And so he was so angry, he lopped off Ganesha's head and went into the house. Parvati, of course, was a little bit upset at this. This is an example of a Hindu myth. It's a myth, it's not a factual story. Parvati, of course, is upset at this, so Shiva went back out to the forest and found the head of the first animal he found in the forest. It happened to be an elephant, and stuck it on Ganesha's body. So that myth sort of symbolizes, at least in my personal interpretation, how both destruction and creativity are part of the divine for Hindus. Hindus don't have a problem with suffering. For Christians and Jews, that's the big question. How could God allow suffering and evil? And now I'm sort of getting into my personal view because I'm comparing it with Christianity. I probably shouldn't do that, so I'll put it off. Try to keep information separate from my personal view. And go on and talk more about what Hindus believe. They believe in reincarnation. When it comes to death, when you die, your Atman, your deepest self, lives on. The Atman is immortal, eternal, and unchanging, and it's deep inside of you. It's deeper than the idea of the Christian soul even. But the Atman lives on, it's eternal. So when you die, your body dies. Hindus typically practice cremation, and then your soul becomes something else. So depending on how you lived your life, you could become, let's say you were a merchant, one of the lower castes. If you were a really good merchant, you could become one of the upper caste people like a Brahmin. And then you'd be closer to liberation, freeing yourself from that cycle of rebirth, moksha, getting off the cycle of rebirth. That's what you want as a Hindu. So Hindus do believe in reincarnation. In terms of morals, something that's kind of unique to Hinduism is karma is the notion of doing your duty, fulfilling your social responsibility. So if you're a servant, be a really good servant. If you're a wife, be a really good wife. If you're a student, be a really good student. And that's all it is for Hindus. It's kind of the essence of morality, doing your duty. It's different, again, I know I'm getting theological, but it's different from Christians where being a good person means going out of your way to help other people. Hi, Kevin, come on in and take a seat. I'm in the hot seat right now. I'm taping an exam. So for Christians, to be a good person, you have to be the good Samaritan and go out of your way to help other people. For Hindus, no, it's just fulfill your basic responsibilities, do your duty. So a Hindu person, passing the guy on the side of the road who's been beat up, pass him by. Go on about your business, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Another aspect of Hindu morality, of course, is karma. That notion of what goes around comes around. If you don't do your duty in your next life, the consequences, you're going to be something unpleasant, like a cockroach or a rat or something that's just not fun to be. Ultimately, Hindus seek moksha, liberation from that cycle of death and rebirth. In terms of worship, we could talk about yoga as a form of worship. Yoga just means path, and there are many paths of spiritual holiness within Hinduism. And one of those paths is called, I believe, Hatha Yoga, which involves breathing and poses. It's very physical. So you will hold a certain pose with your body while you pay attention to your breaths. And then you'll transition to another pose with your body while you pay attention to your breath. It's physically demanding, but the ultimate purpose, of course, isn't physical. The ultimate purpose is more to help you realize that your Atman, your deepest self, is connected with Brahman, the ultimate divine reality. So within Hatha Yoga, Hindus, or within meditation even, Hindus are searching for one-pointed concentration, that deep awareness of your unity with the divine. Another aspect of worship for Hindus is making offerings to little statues. In a Hindu country, like the island of Bali is completely Hindu, or like India, you'll see statues or little sacred objects in outdoor shrines. And every morning people will leave little flowers or some rice or little pieces of fruit as an offering to these different little deities. So in a Hindu country, worship is very public, and people like to make these little offerings. And then the offerings will sit there in the street and ultimately get kicked into the gutter or washed away, or they'll just disappear. But people will leave these little offerings, and it's a form of public worship. So, my personal view of Hinduism, shifting now from just talking about information to talking more about what I personally think, and I think I'll choose the theological perspective. This is interesting because theologically, my bishop, the leader of the Catholic Church in Northeast Indiana, once said to me, he didn't think that Hindus and Catholics had very much in common. He said, we both have a strong emphasis on the family, but that's about it. As I was walking away from that conversation, I thought to myself, he's dead wrong. There's a lot we have in common. On the surface, there are a lot of differences. Hindus believe in these crazy gods. They venerate the statues in ways that we would not. And in fact, I have a story to tell about that. A number of years ago, we went to, with my family, the home of a Hindu acquaintances we knew in Chicago. And they had invited in a teacher to talk about a Hindu sacred text. And then at the end of the talk, everybody venerated a statue of Krishna. And they venerated the statue by taking a candle and waving the candle in front of the statue. So I was kind of like, well, that's all right, I'll try it. So we participated in this veneration of the statue along with everybody else. On the way home, we got into a car accident.